Hey, fierce feminines, welcome to another exciting new episode. As you can see from the title, today we're going to be talking about five reasons stopping you from having lots of money. So, as I said, January's theme is around personal growth, personal development. We are in the third week in January, which how are we in the third week of 2024 is beyond me. But I'm very conscious that people are still in the spirit of setting resolutions. I hope you're hanging on tight to your resolutions and they're not already waning, which, to be honest, if they are, it's not a problem. You can always restart. It's okay. You can always reaffirm your goals and reconnect to your goals. But like I said, I know lots of us are into the resolution spirit. Personally, for me, I've shared this with you guys. I'm really working. I started this back in November 2023, probably even October, but I've really been focusing on getting a better relationship with money. So I was like, let me talk about what's been stopping me, at least in my experience, having lots of money. And this episode is actually inspired. Let me bring it. And now I realize I do videos that I can show you guys. Oh, sorry, I just dropped my lip balm. But it's inspired by this book, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which, to be honest, I came across this book in my girlfriend's library. By library, I mean like a bookshelf in the house. One day we'll have a library in the house. Oh my God, that is absolute dreams, goals, having a library in the house. Guys, I'm getting distracted. But actually, it was a happy accident coming across this book because I'm really into reading. As you guys know, I set myself a goal of reading a book a month at least, sometimes two. And I was going to purchase a new book. I've said this quite a few times. I'm really into psychology, personal growth development, and I love to get books around that. But as I said, I'm focusing on my relationship with money. So I was like, let me get a book related to money. And then I was like, hang on a minute. Instead of just buying a new book, like my girlfriend's got so many books. Let me actually go raid her cupboard to see what she's got. So I checked her little bookshelf and I found this book and I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And I tell you what, I'm glad I picked it up. So I'm going to do a book recommendation on this. For those of you who don't know, I do book recommendations. I'm definitely going to do a book recommendation on this, but I liked it so much, it inspired me to create a whole episode. I have made notes. So I remember like the important bits I wanted to talk about. But before we get into it, what I wanted to talk about is, oh, I didn't do the emotional check-in. How am I feeling? I'm feeling excited. Do you know what? I think it's getting to the point where I might stop. I might phase out the emotional check-in. I feel that was very relevant for season one. But for season two, I'll think about something else we do at the start of each episode because I feel like I just say I'm excited most of the time. So I'm like, what's the point of doing it if I give you the same answer every single time? But, but that's besides the point. What I wanted to say is on the oil burner, full disclosure, the burner has stopped because this is the second episode I'm recording today. But it was tea tree and lavender on the oil burner today, for those of you who are curious. Without further ado, we're going to get into it. I do want to start with explaining when I talk about, so I'm talking about 5 reasons stopping you from having lots of money. But before we get into what I wanted to do is explain to you something called wealth consciousness. So if those of you who may not have heard of it, I came across this term in the book that I'm talking about, and I wrote down the definition before I forget, but it's the opposite of the scarcity mentality. I imagine lots of you have heard of scarcity mentality. So wealth consciousness is the awareness that there is more than enough money to go around for everybody, right? I've always been in scarcity mindset, and that's just due to my upbringing. So if you're listening to this and you're already thinking, oh, maybe I do have a scarcity mindset, fret not. Like, understand, with the fierce feminine, I always talk about a lot of our so-called limiting beliefs are just from learned behaviors. And the great thing about learned behaviors is we can unlearn them and learn new behaviors. So before we get into, I keep saying before we get into, but we're already getting into it. But I wanted to start with just explaining to you guys what wealth consciousness means, because I am going to touch on wealth consciousness when I talk about the 5 reasons that you've been stopping yourself having lots of money. When I read this book, I have to tell you, I was like, so at the point I read the book, this must have been a November last year when I read the book. And I was starting to really understand like my limiting beliefs, which as a coach, I'm very aware of limiting beliefs, but I've only really centered on my limiting beliefs and changing my narrative around what I've been told to believe when it comes to relationships, when it comes to my own personal growth. I never really applied it to money and wanting to have more money. But if you are someone who you may already have money, but you're like, I'd like to have more of it, but I just seem to hit like this ceiling when it comes to having money. Well, here, I believe you probably resonate with these reasons. So, reason number one is you have forgotten who you are. So I really felt this when I read the book. When I read the book, I was like, preach. So one thing I really liked about the book is it is definitely along the lines of manifestation, law of attraction. But one difference about this book is when I talk about the reason you don't have lots of money is you've forgotten who you are, is this book explains law of attraction through quantum physics, and it really gets into our level of consciousness and the fact that we are matter, we are energy. But one thing I want to really highlight is the book made this, there was a statement in the book that really touched me. So it said something along the lines of I've just noticed my chain isn't showing, which like of course I want it to show. Guys, look, apologies, I am going to get distracted with the videos. But anyway, it's clearly fake gold. Look how shiny it is on the camera. Anyway, the book essentially said that a lot of us have fallen into the belief that we are bodies with a soul. So people who believe in soul, spirit, or even if you don't believe in souls, then this concept of consciousness, right? We all know we all have a level of, humans have a level of consciousness, which some people coin soul. But the book says that a lot of us are stuck in the belief of we are a body with a soul, when really we're a soul with a body. And some of you moaning, all right, that's neither here nor there. But I noticed the difference, and I completely understand what the book is saying, in the sense that when you limit yourself and when you restrict yourself to your physical being, that typically causes a lot of issues in the way you see the world. I found in my experience that I've been creating a lot of limitations within myself and within my physical environment by thinking I'm just this physical being. But once you start to understand that you are beyond your physical being and your level of consciousness is to the point that you can't even comprehend. Like science has recently really started to study this thing we call consciousness and the power of our consciousness. But according to the book, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, it talks about to have more money and to gain wealth consciousness, you first have to understand who you truly are. So stop thinking you're just this body, and AKA stop limiting yourself to this so-called physical being and start understanding that you are beyond your physical being. Your consciousness can create a whole new world that is beyond your wildest dreams. And for me, that really stood out. And I was like, mental note taken. And I'm noticing, I mean, I'll come on to it at the end of it to let you know, has this made a difference? But this is definitely reason number one why you don't have lots of money. You have limited yourself to your physical being. And to start to build your wealth consciousness, you want to get into the headspace and understand that your consciousness is way beyond your so-called physical being. And this moves on to reason number two, which is that you have a warped concept when it comes to time. This is another one I have heard. If you're anyone who's ever looked into law of attraction and you've looked into the explanation of law of attraction with quantum physics, you may have heard this concept. I remember like a colleague of mine talking about this, honestly, like at least 10 years ago or more even. okay, no, maybe less, about 10 years ago, it doesn't matter. Or anyway, I remember having this conversation with this really geeky, nerdy guy that, like, I love having these conversations, by the way, but I remember he was explaining to me back then, and he was saying that there's this theory in physics or quantum physics that says that time is not the way we see it, right? We see time as the past, present, and future. And the book explains that one of the reasons we lack wealth, we lack money, is that we are most of the times, and I believe this, and I've read about this even in just your own personal growth, a lot of us are often stuck in the past or too focused on the future, and we forget to stay in the present moment. Well, this book actually relates that concept back to your lack of wealth, and it speaks about, to have more money, you have to understand that the only time, I mean, it explains it in a lot more detail, because it talks about how all of time is happening in one parallel. So the past, present, and future are all happening at the same time, but the only time that is relevant is the present moment. And any of you who's into spirituality, who's into woo, you already know that a lot of us emphasize that to have more happiness, more joy, whatever it is, focus on mindfulness, focus on the present moment. And I was like, yes, I hear you, because now I'm hearing that to have more money, you have to understand that time is all that really matters when it comes to time is the present moment, and always. So the book talks about now and always, here, now, and always. So the only time there is now. The only moment that exists is here. Stop putting yourself in the past. And when you think about, well, how is this related to money? A lot of us are stuck in that scarcity mindset because our parents told us that there wasn't enough money to go around. Or a lot of us are stuck in the future and go, well, I don't have money now, but if I have money in the future, or I would like to have money in the future. So we're focused in the past or the future. We're not actually in the present moment as to observing and noticing where the opportunities are to attract money in this present moment. And the book really talks about that feeling and getting into the feeling and sensation of, you are already wealthy, so stop worrying about having money. So one of the reasons that you do not have the money you want to have is you have a warped concept of time. So understand that the only time that exists is now, and the only moment there exists is here, essentially, and you start to understand. And if that's still not making sense, then I'm sure when I tie it to the third point, which is one of the reasons stopping you from having lots of money, is that you are not intentional with your language. I definitely related to this. And one thing I really loved about reading this is the fact that prior to picking up the book and reading it, and prior to even saying I want to focus on money, I had, guys, I've said this constantly, I meditate every day. I had been meditating in 2023 daily. And in one of the meditations, the guided meditations I came across, which if you haven't heard of his name, by the way, he's called Brian Scott. He's got really amazing spiritual meditations that I really enjoy. But in one of his meditations, it's called the I Am meditation, which, shout out to my older sister, because she was the one who told me about Brian Scott's meditations. But anyway, one of the meditations is I Am. And if you look up and do your own research, you will understand the power of those two sentences, I am, which, if you think about reason number 2 I shared with you, the only time that matters is the here and now. So the book talks about how the way we speak and the way we think is blocking us from wealth consciousness. And what you really want to get to into space of is, when it comes to attracting money, you want to be speaking in the present tense. You, like, a lot of people go like, I will, or eventually, right? Like, I hope one day, right? And it actually talks about that one day. Like, you want to remove yourself from that one day or eventually or hopefully in the future, and you want to be speaking in the statement I am, because the statement I am is the most powerful statement you can think of, because of the way the universe works and the way time works. The universe only speaks the language of the present moment, because remember, the only time that exists is the present moment. So if you are someone who believes in affirmations and who believes in manifestation, is wanting to attract money into your life this 2024, you better get into the habit of speaking in I am. I've been doing this where now, and honestly, like, I had to really challenge myself. I had to learn to be intentional. And I'm like, okay, so when it comes to money, I can only speak in I am. So like, what does that even mean? So I'm like, okay, I am a money magnet. I am when in the past, and I'm going to touch on this, I used to be like, I want, and it talks about like wanting is a no-no. You want to remove your space from wanting, because that's another reason that's stopping you from having lots of money. But also you want to pay attention and be intentional with your language and understand. Honestly, guys, I wish I would spend hours if I was to go into the whole book and really talk about the book, but look up the power of I am and understand why that statement is so powerful in itself. But also understand that if you want to have more money and if you're manifesting more money, then learn to speak in the I am language, as opposed to I wish, or I would love to, or I want. A lot of people do I want, but no. And a lot of people do I will. So that's a no-no. I want is a no-no, and I will is a no-no. And speak and be more intentional in your language and say I am. And I've noticed that, speaking of intentionality, I do notice that when I speak in the I am language, I find myself being more intentional about my actions. I find myself being more intentional about even the way I speak, for example, because I'm like, I am, what am I? And in that moment, I'm saying, I'm wealth, I am abundance, I am joy, I'm happiness. I notice that I get this like overwhelming sensation like in my body, and I feel that energy start to rise because I've chosen the word I am as opposed to other versions, essentially. But definitely look it up, because that's one of the reasons that's been stopping you. Before I share two more reasons, and there is a bonus as well I am going to share with you, but before I share those two more, I want to take the moment to pause and talk to you about Terami. For anyone who, guys, for some of you might be wondering, why is she saying Terami? Terami. It's the name comes from the Italian language. So Terami means my earth, which you would have heard my girlfriend talk about it in the episode of how to boost your well-being through aromatherapy, I believe it's called, which we did in season 1. But anyway, it is pronounced Terami, and it is Italian inspired. But if you're into essential oils, link in the affiliate, link in the description below. Check out the affiliate link and check out the essential oils and purchase one if you want to. You don't gotta, but if you want to, purchase one. And moving on into the next, guys, I'm trying to show my chain. I'm like, what's the point of wearing a chain if it's not going to show? But then I'm like, it looks so yellow in the light. And I'm like, I hope it looks cool. I already said it's fake gold. So like, nobody come for my chain. I've become I have become a lot more aware of my appearance since going on YouTube. Like, YouTube is a whole different ball game, isn't it? Anyway, last two reasons why you do not have the amount of money that you want in your bank account is reason number 4 is you lack direction. Guys, if you've been listening to my podcast, if you've been listening to the Fierce Feminine Rising, you know fully well I speak about the importance of having goals. Before I even read this book, funny enough, I used to apply this to other areas of my life, but I didn't really think about it when it came to money, because to be honest, I never really learned much about money. A lot of the things I learned about money was negative. But to have the amount you want in your bank account, it helps to have a goal. And the reason you want to have a goal is it helps you with direction. Having a goal, a lot of people don't understand. Some people just think like a goal is not necessarily to help you arrive at a destination. A goal is to give you direction. A goal is to help aim your focus, especially if you're an ambitious person. I find a lot of ambitious people have a lot of energy and have a lot of ambition, exactly. And they want to channel that ambition into something. So having direction helps you channel that focus. And to have more money in your bank account, if now saying it out loud, it feels like a no-brainer. But I read in the book and I was like, fair play. But I'm like, I'm saying it's a no-brainer, but maybe some people aren't doing this. So if you wanted to have more money, understand that you need to be setting yourself financial goals. If you're not already setting yourself financial goals, what are you doing? And when you set those financial goals, do be mindful that if you set something that feels unrealistic, then you're going to struggle to achieve it. And I do talk about the importance of having realistic and versus unrealistic goals. I also talk about this in my coaching program. But understand that to help you reach your financial goal, you number one have to have a goal. Number two, you have to make it realistic. If it's unrealistic, for example, if you're someone who's currently earning £40,000 a year, and then you set yourself a financial goal of £1 million, it's going to feel so far-fetched that your brain almost like just doesn't want to do anything towards it. But if you set yourself a more realistic goal, like, okay, I want to bump myself up to 60K a year, then that feels a lot easier for your brain. And it's like magic. Your brain will just start to find ways. Your consciousness, let's not call it your brain, your consciousness will start to find ways to make that a reality for you. Like, honestly, guaranteed. I found that in my world, and I found that in other people's worlds as well. When I've spoken to people about this, like, if you set yourself a realistic financial goal, trust that your instincts, your consciousness, yourself, your soul will help you, and it will open up doors that you didn't even know existed. Like, once you just have that wealth consciousness, the doors will start to open up and you'll be like, okay, so like all of a sudden I'm on 60K. Oh, now I'm on 100K. Now I'm on 150K. So you want to set yourself goals, and it's probably because you haven't set yourself goals yet. That's why you haven't achieved the financial goals you want. And that leads to number 5, which is you doubt the possibility of wealth, which is why you're yet to have the money you have. And again, this might be like another like, oh, well, of course, if you doubt wealth, you're not going to have it. But I never thought I was like this. I always used to be like, I'm an ambitious person. Like, I want to earn this salary. And then I would put it out there in the universe, and the universe will give me the salary I wanted. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But then, like, when I started to really delve deep into my spirituality, and I started to meditate a lot and started to learn more about myself, I started to notice the resistance I had when it came to money. And this was tied to limiting beliefs that I grew up with, right? And I spoke about this, I believe, in the episode with Leah Durante, where I speak about like growing up, all the narrative around money was money doesn't grow on tree. There's not enough money to go around. We don't have enough money. Like, every negative thing you can think about money, I was taught that growing up, right? And I definitely know that my upbringing played a big role in me thinking and me building that scarcity mindset. And to undo that scarcity mindset, I started to understand that one of the reasons I don't have the money I want is because I doubt the possibility of wealth. I grew up believing that to be rich, you either had to be born into wealth, or you marry into wealth, or you were fortunate enough, I don't know, you got lucky and some rich person decided they like you and they gave you the inheritance. Like, in my head, those are the only ways you could be rich. Or the other alternative was you had to do something bad, or you had to be a bad person, or you had to be corrupt. Guys, I grew up in West Africa, Nigeria. Like, the level of corruption was next level. So in my head, those were the only 4 ways to be rich. So now I'm now sitting here, fast forward 35, 36 years later, and I'm telling myself I am a money magnet. I am attracting lots of money. Meanwhile, my subconscious is like, no, you're not, girl. Like, we don't like money. We hate money. And I had to work on myself and do the inner work and start to understand that there was a very strong resistance within me to earn more money. There was a strong resistance to me to believe. There's a strong resistance in me that didn't believe I was someone who deserved millions of millions of millions. But on the other hand, I was asking for millions of millions and millions. So one of the reasons you don't have the money and the bank account of your dreams is that you currently have limiting beliefs that tell you that you can't have that wealth. And because you have those limiting beliefs, the book A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which I really liked about the book actually, it speaks about this certainty, which again, you should, if you haven't already listened to the episode, you need to watch or listen to the episode with Leah Durante where we talk about regulating the nervous system and money, because when she's describing my 3 states of my nervous system, the most elated state, I talk about, my statement was, I am free and the world is loving. And in that state, when she asked me to describe how I felt in that state, I said there was this knowing. And that really touched me because in the book talks about, and fun fact, I do have to put it out there, I had already recorded that episode before I'd read the book, actually. I know it means I recorded it in November, but you didn't watch it till January. But anyway, when we talk about that knowing, the book also mentions it. It mentions about you have to have a certainty. There's this level of certainty. And I was having this conversation with my sister. I was like, do you know what? I noticed that when I look at people who are born into wealth, when I look at my circle of friends who are born into wealth, or even I watch like reality shows about kids who are so-called born into wealth. I'm sure you guys probably heard of Made in Chelsea if you live in the UK, for example. I noticed that the really wealthy kids, there's this just like sense of knowing, like they never think about money, they never worry about money, they never stress about money because they were born into wealth, so they know they'll always have money. But a lot of us who come from backgrounds where we were born into poverty, or we're born into scarcity, or we're born into a life where money was a struggle, guess what? We constantly worry, we constantly stress about money, we constantly resist money because we see money as our enemy, essentially. And this is what's stopping you from having lots of money in your bank account. So if you want to start having more money in your bank account, you want to dig up, ask yourself the questions and start to dig up all those beliefs that has been ingrained in you from when you were younger about money, and start to understand. Again, go listen to that nervous system regulation episode. Start to identify what your statements are in those 3 states to know what you feel like when you're feeling that feeling of desperation when it comes to money. You want to start pulling all of that out. And then you want to question yourself and you want to question the narrative and be like, well, is that true? Is money the root of all evil? And I mean, now I can confidently tell you, well, no, money's not the root of all evil. I love money. Money allows me travel. It allows me explore. It allows me go for pottery classes. Like, I love money. Of course I love money. I love sharing money. But growing up, I was told not to love money. I was told money was evil. So one of the reasons stopping you from having lots of money is you may likely believe that money, you may currently believe money is the root of all evil, or you may have other limiting beliefs within you that is essentially blocking you from having that certainty. You want to get into a space, and this book really talks about it. And I was like, that's actually quite powerful because it talks about, to have a solid wealth consciousness, you want to get into that space of certainty, that space where you just know, like, I'm rich. I have lots of money. I'm what? Look, I said I have no. You want to get into that space. It's like, well, I am rich. I'm abundant. I'm a money maker. I'm attracting money constantly. I am building multiple sources of income. Like, that's the space you want to be in. And once you get into that certain knowing, that certainty, think about it, right? It feels very obvious, but if you feel very certain that you're wealthy, your worries melt away, your stress won't melt away. And if your worries and stress melts away, you feel more positive. You're in more open space. And guys, I don't know if you've heard this. I was going to say we all know, but we all know that like attracts like, right? So if you're in a more positive space, people tend to gravitate towards you, right? You tend to have this like charm about you, this kindness about you, this generosity about you, right? Because you're not stressing, so people want to be around you. And if people want to be around you, opportunities want to be around you. And in the book, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, and even in Law of Attraction, it talks about how energy works, right? And if you're in a certain vibration, some people talk about it in spirituality, you're a certain vibration, you start to attract more goodness when you're in that vibration. So even if you don't see it from a soul or spiritual standpoint, see it from that whole standpoint of, if you're in a positive mindset, your mind is more open to seeing opportunities, your mind is more open to seeing possibilities. If your mind is more open to opportunities and possibilities, we all know opportunities and possibilities can lead to money. It can attract money. So get to thinking, get to opening up about how you feel about money, what your relationship is with money. Do you believe you can have money or not? And actually, before I forget about it, and before I close out, the book also talks about, which I believe is tied to the fifth point, it talks about it talks about removing yourself from that space of want. And think about it, we always talk about this, people talk about it, like even like in romantic relationships, if you come across as desperate, then like nobody wants to date you. When you're like, but I'm really desperate and I want to date someone, and everyone's like, get away from me. People talk about that when it comes to attracting amazing partners. It's, guess what, money's the same, wine and dine money. So the book talks about removing yourself from that space of wanting, because even if you look at the definition of wanting, it means a lack of. And if you're a space of lack, then you're repelling money. So to have lots of money, you want to remove your space of want. And if anything, the book talks about desire, which I talk about desire a lot on the Fierce Feminine Rising, and living a life where you live your life from a space of desire as opposed to a space of fear. So you can probably tell why I really resonated with this book. But I quite like that when it said, and this is why I said, if you're someone who's into affirmations, you definitely want to avoid affirmations, which I mentioned Brian Scott. He does have a few affirmations that talk about I want, but instead of using I want, you want to change it to I am, because want tells you, the universe, that you are lacking. And with manifestation, law of attraction, that the more you resist something, the more you attract it, if that makes sense. Or the more, actually, you guys are like, well, if that's the case, let me resist money so money can come to me. No, it's the more you're in a space of lack, the more you're going to attract lack, essentially, when you think about law of attraction. So you remove yourself. I'm like avoiding saying want, but ultimately get into a space where you remove that wanting. And if you're going to do anything, then at least maybe put yourself in a space of desire. So instead of I want money, I desire money, because desire puts you in a different energy space and it puts you in a different vibration. So it's like, I desire to have a house is much better than saying I want to have a house. Even saying it out loud, I can feel the difference. I want feels like a lack. And it feels like a desperation, like, oh my God, I don't have it, I have to have it. While I desire is like, you know what, if I have it, if I don't have it, And again, going back to law of attraction and manifestation, you know fully well that the whole point of manifestation is like, you put it out there and you let go of worry. You remember I talk about like making your manifestation stronger. You put it out there and you let go of the worry. So removing yourself from a space of want also helps you remove yourself from that like unknowing desperation that I really want this thing, so you're not going to get it. So remove your space from that, and you can be like, I desire money, which is like, yeah, if I have it, cool. If I don't have it, cool. And then because you're in that space, then it's just going to come to you. And then the bonus, actually, before we finish, is, like I mentioned, that relationship with money. That was a big thing for me, understanding that all the while I was manifesting abundance, I was manifesting wealth, but there was that part of me that was like, yeah, but money's bad. But like, no, but we don't want money, because if you get money, you become a bad person. So understanding your relationship with money is really important. I want you to start studying yourself when it comes to spending money. Do you notice a resistance? And that was the bonus I was going to share as well, that you want to get into a space where you just start to act with the fierce feminine. I'm very big on being proactive, being intentional. And when we talk about that certainty, when it comes to like, I just know I have money, so like life is great. You want to get into a space, and the book speaks about what we know as karma, right? And cause and effect. What goes around comes around. So for every action, there's an effect. And for the effect, there was a cause for that action, if that makes sense. And when you think about it from the karma perspective and from a space of certainty, you like put yourself in a space where, because you know you're wealthy, because you're certain that money's coming your way, you open up and you share. And by sharing, it doesn't mean, I'm not telling you like take the £5 you have in your bank account and go give it away. And if you are going to give it away and give it away with all your heart. But I'm not saying take that £5 and go give it away, but just give of yourself. And that can be just through kindness. It can be through a conversation. It can be through sharing this video, for example, and saying like, I've just watched this video about wealth. You should watch it too. So the book talks about getting in that headspace of generosity and sharing and giving. And the more you put yourself in that space, watch how, I mean, we all know about karma, right? Watch how good things come back to you. The more good things you give, the more good things come back to you. And the more goodness you cause in the world, it's going to create that ripple effect that's going to cause more goodness. Honestly, I could go more on and on with this book. Like there's a lot more I want to cover when it comes to the lessons learned from a happy pocket full of money. But I want to end it on that note, and honestly recommend you get the book. There were bits of the book where I felt like the way it was written, it was like written, there's like huge chunks that it was just like quote after quote after quote. So I feel like that disrupted the flow of the book, but I really enjoyed it and I recommend this book. This was not meant to be a book recommendation, but I'm like, if I'm getting a lot of information from the book, of course I'll share it. But really quickly, I did want to share that in my experience, I'm noticing a significant difference since I've been working on my wealth consciousness. I do also, like I keep caveating, guys, with a lot of things I share, do bear in mind connection to self. And the book actually talks about this, like you want to strengthen your connection to self. And the reason I say that is the book talks about meditating, which, you know, I already meditate every day. Meditation has been a massive game changer for me. I've noticed a difference in my mindset. I've noticed a difference in working on myself, and I've noticed a difference in the abundance that brings. I've noticed the calmness I face every situation. I've noticed how I'm more intentional with every situation I face. I've noticed how staying calm, staying stress-free, staying worry-free opens up doors I never imagined. It opens up opportunities I never imagined. So I recommend you start to find your connection to yourself. Even if it's not through meditation, then find what works for you, find what feels good for you, and go with it. But ultimately, you want to really start to tap into who you are before you forgot yourself, who you are before society told you who you should be, who you are before the fear and negativity of the adults around you told you who you should be. You want to start to tap into that version of yourself. And once you tap into that version of yourself, watch how your life changes dramatically.